Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I just did panel discussion where we discussed the Great Resignation and how it's shifting into the Great Attraction.
According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, 4 million Americans quit their jobs in July 2021. Employees between 30 and 45 years old have had the greatest increase in resignation rates, with an average increase of more than 20% between 2020 and 2021. This tidal wave of resignations is being called the Great Resignation. Hi, I'm Dr. Karthik Nagendra. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Amoeboids Technologies. So we are bringing to you the Future of Work Knowledge Series, where we are talking to global HR leaders to understand what's the roadmap going to look like for the future of workplaces and work at large. We recently published our first CHRO study, where we spoke to 500 plus HR leaders globally, and there were some very interesting insights which emerged out of the study, and we will be discussing that today as well. Our theme for today is from Great Attrition to Great Attraction. I have an eminent list of panelists with me here today. So first, Professor Jonathan Westover. He's from the Utah Valley University. He is an award-winning #1 best-selling author, ranked #1 HR innovation and future of work global thought leader. He's the chair and professor of organization leadership. Welcome, Professor Westover.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Our next panelist is Sharad Verma. He's the CHRO of Iris Software Incorporation. He has more than 2 decades of experience in HR in leadership roles with many leading organizations like Polaris, SunGard, Monster, among others. He's named among India's best HR leaders by Human Capital magazine. Welcome, Sharad. Nice to have you with us.
Nice to be here. Thank you so much. Glad to be among eminent panelists.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Shrijata Basu. She is the Director Global HR for iMerit Technologies. She has close to 2 decades of experience in HR across multiple geographies, various industries, where she's managed HR processes for workforces with over 10,000 employees globally. Welcome, Shrijata. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
And we also have with us Anand Inamdar. He's the CEO and co-founder of Amoeboids. So we are, like I mentioned, a platinum Atlassian marketplace partner. Welcome, Anand.
Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to the insightful conversation that we are going to have.
So my first question, Professor. So what do you think the future of work looks like now that we've had this once-in-a-generation seismic event which has taken place?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the future of work looks more like what we've been seeing over the last couple of years during the pandemic. We've seen a seismic shift, a rapid shift. And I think many analysts figured, 5 to 10 years from now, we would see the level of virtual technology-driven work as we are seeing now. But the pandemic accelerated us into that shift. It forced organizational leaders to pivot on a dime and to adopt technologies that perhaps they were resistant to. And now we find ourselves, after nearly 2 years of pandemic, we find ourselves used to these technologies that once perhaps we didn't really want to adopt. So I think the shift has been happening. It will continue to happen. the future of work is going to see even greater technological integration of how we work. For example, the metaverse, what role is that going to play in the future of work? I suspect it'll play a big role. Automation, AI, machine learning, all of these different disruptive technologies are going to shape the future of work and displace certain tasks, and in some cases, perhaps even jobs or even entire careers, while simultaneously creating entire new avenues of work. So it's a pretty exciting time. Certainly, though, it's a disruptive and tumultuous time.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be learn as you go as well for a lot of leaders, HR community, and even employees to adapt to this new work environment that's going to be there. So as I was mentioning, we recently conducted a global CHRO study, and one of the findings that we got there was over 70% of employees see anxiety and stress impacting their work. So Sharad, how do you see this contributing to the great attrition or the great resignation that we're looking at?
Thanks, Dr. Karthik. I think it's a very valid question, which kind of has been staring us in the face for last couple of years. So there are two parts to it, right? One is the anxiety and the stress and how that in turn contributes to the great resignation, as it is called. I think if you look at the anxiety and the stress part, so there are two lenses to look at it. One is what happened in the last couple of years, which is pandemic as it spread through the world and created an anxiety and uncertainty of its own. But stress used to be there in jobs even before pandemic, right? So the way I look at anxiety and stress is there are many drivers of that at workplace, right? It could be, and fundamentally, it is when something is not in alignment. Your talent, your peace of mind, how you are contributing to your workplace, how your creativity, your potential, when all of those factors are not being completely utilized, you have some amount of stress. It could translate into interpersonal relationships, maybe your manager, your manager's manager, the entire environment, what is called as toxic culture, for example. All of that kind of puts a pressure on you and stress on you. And I think pre-pandemic, the tolerance levels were higher. And, we used to think like, okay, this is part of the job, a certain level of stress is part of the job. And you even have to learn the skills to cope with it, and it was part of your survival skill portfolio to, cope with that kind of situation. I think pandemic has changed that because there is a bigger anxiety bubble in which we are all living. So pandemic is a much bigger global anxiety bubble. That's how I like to think of it. So in the last couple of years, if you see multiple variants, you don't know what's going to happen a couple of months from now. There is a flip-flop. Sometimes you see the situation is improving, and then suddenly another wave comes and another variant comes. And so there's a lot of uncertainty, anxiety. People have faced a lot of tragedy. They have seen like second wave in India, hardly anybody was not impacted. So that caused a lot of stress and anxiety. So that's the stress and anxiety that we are dealing with. How is that contributing to great resignation? I think it has kind of forced, or it has brought people to a situation where they are reevaluating, what is all this all about? What is life all about if you have uncertainty about your life because of pandemic? And what does it mean to ignore your family and be like working 14 hours in a day? And because you're working from home, you are actually very close to your home physically, but you get on call at 9 a.m. and then you switch off at 10 p.m. You say hello to your children for 5 minutes, dinner table. So is that the life that you really want? What is the cost of this? So I think pandemic has brought a mirror to us that what is the kind of life you are living? What is the cost you are paying? Is this stress really worth it? look at the larger picture.
True.
And I think it has lowered the tolerance level. This is not something that we want to keep up with. So that's thing. And of course, the market situation has changed because everybody is working from home. So that has been a great leveler. Location is no longer a constraint. Appearing for an interview is very easy. You just get on a Zoom call, that's your interview. And if you're selected and you want to join, then log into another Zoom call and, now your induction is done and you are joining another company. So the barriers have disappeared, buying a ticket, getting onto an airplane, going somewhere. So that you had to think it over. How does it fit in with my schedule? Do I really want to relocate, etc.? All those things have disappeared. So the market forces is a very big factor. And companies have adapted very strongly and very rapidly to that changing environment. So today, earlier you would have evaluated so much, okay, he's in a different location. Should I make this offer or not? Today, you are not doing that. You're welcoming talent with into the company. So these are the factors: stress, anxiety, great resignation. Interesting phenomena. I do agree with Professor Westover that this change is real, and the change has accelerated. The things we expected in 10 years to happened in just a couple of years.
True. So multiple aspects that you spoke about, and one very interesting point you spoke about was about toxic culture, right? So in our study, it showed that over 66% of respondents said future employees will look for leaders who bring in a lot more transparency in the organization. So Shrijata, do you think organizations shelter toxic leaders? And how, in case that's happening in organizations, how do you think that can be avoided?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sharad brought in the tune of it, and it has changed over a period of time. The toxicity is more visible now. I mean, previously, like he said, that it was just there, and we just went ahead with it and thinking that is what is expected, right? And sadly, the first answer to your question is sadly it is. I mean, it is there. And the reason why they're sheltered is in most cases, toxic leaders, or we shouldn't tell them leaders, it's most probably the quote unquote bosses, are the ones who are high performers. Now, what do we say about high performers? Are people who deliver business goals, right? Correct numbers, huge amount of profits, things that are all on the positive side of the, your profit and loss statement. What happens is in such a scenario where somebody delivers huge amount of their goals, particularly, you kind of look over or skid over the issues that the team is facing under that person, right? We don't go in to see that, okay, I mean, come on, I mean, he is delivering, so I'm sure there is pressure under it. People need to understand that, just go and do the pressure. It's a part of the life. I mean, it's part, but what we don't see is, in most cases, if you see, and this has been a word of mouth ever, that employees do not leave, companies, they leave bosses, right? And if there are leaders, people don't leave them. I mean, see, people will move on. It's not like if somebody is there, it will, but you will always have that relationship. So till the time the company starts looking into that, is the team engaged? I understand there is a leader, he delivers or she delivers, but is the team engaged? Do we find enough, people who can come up and say, wonderful things about this person? So yes, that is there. And what we need to do to avoid such things, I think it's not avoidance, but more actionizing to reduce that toxicity, right? And we need to start early. If we start, most organizations can focus on leadership development really, really early. When an employee is moving from a personal or individualistic role into a team lead, or somewhere that they are taking care of the team, it is where you actually introduce the leadership development, right? Not when they have already 20 people strong team and they have no understanding what a team managing is, right? Especially in this scenario, think of people who have just become, team leads or managers, and suddenly their whole team is, working remotely. They don't even see them. They don't even know what a leadership is. So if we kind of introduce that idea of leadership building very early on in the career, I think that would, enable us to bring the perspective of I versus we, right? Where, that, and in most cases, if you see, leaders are not, or we need to understand that leaders are not always the star performers in our team. It is their teams who are the star performers, right? It is the leaders who will drive the team to make sure that, they perform in that way, right? And also, I think, regularly to avoid, or to identify that culture, there is something that the C-level executives or senior level executives can kind of continuously do is some skip level meetings. It's very small thing, most probably, but it has a huge impact. Remove the managers from the meetings when you are meeting the team, so the team feel comfortable coordinating with maybe a 2-level skip person or a 3-level skip hierarchy, in the sense, CEO going down and meeting on the floor, right? Speaking to the people when the managers are not present, or even the HR or the people in the management not present, bringing people into a room and you check what are things that are going wrong, right? And I think that is very, very important to identify, actionize, and to start early to remove the toxins flow into the model.
So Professor, you focus a lot on the organization, the leadership aspect of things. So would you like to add anything to what Shrijata just spoke about?
Yeah, I think toxic leadership is a huge problem in most organizations. It's certainly not a universal issue. Not every senior leader or executive is going to be a toxic leader. But I think just by the nature of the types of roles people take on and what it takes to ascend into those roles, you will find a disproportionate number of toxic people who end up being elevated into senior roles, unless you're really, really thoughtful and proactive about addressing that as you're going through the process of career development and leadership development and creating pathways for people to move up in your organization. If you're not proactive about it, I think inadvertently most organizations will probably by default end up promoting more toxic leaders than not. And so if we're going to try to create a psychologically safe organizational culture, we have to be mindful of the toxicity. We need to be mindful of the people who surround the toxic leaders, sycophants and other yes men and yes women who are trying to latch on to this high performer in order to progress their own career. We need to really put in place mechanisms to get those things cut out of the organization as much as possible. Because when you have those toxic people surrounded by sycophants, you end up having an environment that's not psychologically safe, where people don't feel like they can honestly voice dissent or their opinions or share new ideas. They fear that they will be punished for things that maybe they try that don't work. And ultimately, you're going to squash any sort of innovation that you might try, that you might want to encourage within the organization. My experience has been most organizations are, they know intellectually, they know theoretically that they should be promoting a psychologically safe, innovative culture. And they'll even say those things, but where the rubber meets the road, they have policies, practices, procedures, and norms embedded within the organization and the systems of the organization that actively discourage the actual innovation that they say they want. So unless we can have the type of leadership that can model a psychologically safe environment, and we can take a good hard look at those systems and institutionalized structures that might inadvertently reinforce, bad behaviors as well as discourage creative, innovative behaviors, regardless of what our intention is, we're not going to get the types of outcomes that we want.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So, in our study, it also showed that over 61% of employees actually look for coaching and continuous feedback from their managers. So if the behavior of the manager is toxic, and if that's not addressed at that level, it could then go on contributing to a much toxic culture. So Anand, what do you think? How can organizations have the right people at the right places to create better work environments, and especially focusing on managers or team leaders?
I mean, I wish there was a very simple solution, something like a magic wand. I'm sure everyone on this conversation would want something like that. But unfortunately, that's not the case, right? I mean, what you need in that situation is really the empathy to look at that specific individual and train and coach them. Extending what Professor Westover and Shri mentioned, you have to start looking at these individuals in their leadership grooming roles before they actually become leaders by their title, right? If we're just thinking about leaders as someone with a C-suite, someone who is chief in X, chief in Y, then probably the entire organizational culture is going to collapse, right? The managers, the tech leads, these are your leaders, and you have to make them leaders before they actually become, or rather gain, that title. So I really believe that continuous feedback is the way to go. At the end of the day, these managers, these leaders have someone they are reporting to, their own managers. At the end of the day, these are the people at the higher level who can help out in terms of coaching and really grooming these individuals from the leadership point of view.
Interesting. So which it kind of boils down to how the performance management itself is being done to identify, groom, nurture these leaders. And our study shows that over 45% of organizations feel that the performance management needs to be aligned more closely with objectives and key results of the organizations. So Sharad, employees now want career paths and development opportunities. They need more clarity, and especially when they're working in remote or hybrid work environments, there's a lot more of uncertainty of saying, so how will I be evaluated, whether there's going to be any favoritism, and so on and so forth, right? So how can organizations ensure that they're providing a transparent system, a system where their performance is very closely aligned to, say, OKRs, and thereby, their productivity and performance also improves. So what are your thoughts on that?
Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Academy. Courses, micro-credentials, and certificates to upskill and reskill for the future of work. All HCI Academy courses, micro-credentials, and certificates are designed, developed, and delivered by award-winning and internationally renowned scholars, educators, thought leaders, executives, and practitioners. Our courses, micro-credentials, and certificates will help you make your mark on the future of work and make an immediate impact in your organizations. Check out the HCI Academy and our many course offerings and certificates to upskill and reskill for the future of work. Check out our new weekly LinkedIn newsletter, Alchemizing Human Capital, exploring industry trends via original research and interviews with executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We look forward to having you join us.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, in terms of, how do you provide transparency in the performance assessment process, and also how do you link that with career opportunities and development opportunities, right? So I think there are some great tools. The OKR methodology that you yourself described just now, it's a great methodology because basically, performance evaluation is all about conversations.
Yeah.
It's about what kind of conversations you have, what frequency you have those conversations, what is the content of those conversations, so that it does not feel like you are evaluating and assessing and you are on test, etc. Also, annual is just not enough, right? And sometimes you find that, you have ratings, but then you do not have explanation for those ratings. And then employees are kind of left wondering, why was I rated this and not that, So I think the classic theory about what is good feedback is basically it's objective, it's regular, it's constructive, it is in favor of it is given with the intent of, developing the person. All of that is helpful. And OKRs kind of is a pretty good methodology for that. That you have regular check-ins, you have open conversations, and it should be a two-way process. If somebody did not achieve a goal, then the emphasis should be on understanding what went wrong. Maybe somebody had too many goals. Maybe they were unrealistic to start with. Maybe the entire ecosystem was not set up for them to achieve those goals. So that conversation needs to be a broader conversation. And interestingly, if you don't have those conversations, and if your entire reward system is based only on numbers, then it might become a toxic culture, like we were talking earlier. Because they are like prima donna performers who just say, these are my numbers and I have achieved them. But how did you achieve those numbers? Did you display the right behaviors? Did you cause a damage? So the conversation should also focus on those. So I think the right tools and technologies make a big difference over there. If you have a totally transparent system, you can go to, like, if you have inside the company a Facebook type of system where you could go to and see what are the OKRs for the CEO and where do they stand on those. And, they are more, they give you insight into how they are progressing on those. And you could basically click on anybody in the company, see what their OKRs are. So it's that kind of brings in a transparency that, look, everybody is sailing in the same boat. And we publish, and there are companies who make, for example, the calendars public. So how they are spending their time, what issues they are spending their time on, what is important for the CEO and for the senior leaders. So that everybody is being measured, everybody is focusing on important things. And it's not just the numbers, but it's also the how. And the conversation happens in a constructive environment. I think those are a few.
Constructive conversation is the key aspect.
Constructive conversation is the key, I think. Yes.
Yeah. So, Shri, would you like to add anything to what Sharad just spoke about?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just pick up as Sharad said, being transparent and being public. I mean, painting the big picture to everybody in the organization is very important, right? I mean, somewhere the goals are created and then it flows down, and it's lost somewhere. I mean, to connect my goal against the CEO goal is very, very important at whatever level we are. So as leaders, we have to take that, take that bottom line to communicate clearly and transparently and saying that, this is what we are trying to achieve over this year. These are the things that at C level or this level we will focus on. You will be able to focus on these things because, just saying, client delivery or numbers or this thing will only create more non-transparent environment, which will again go back to the question. There's one more thing that is very, very important for me, I think, is the intent. We can have all set up, all tools. I understand that tools are very important, but they're tools, right? You will use them as intently as you have to. So the company or any organization needs to bring in a culture of positive intent, that the managers are really interested to grow their team, right? To show smaller milestones and actually guide them through it. And, even cheer them on if a milestone is not met. It's fine, right? I mean, so that is also important. It's not just about meeting milestone. It's also about cheering on when the milestone is not met. And smaller milestones. It's not about like, Sharad and, Jonathan was also saying that, it's not about the whole year. It's not about the whole thing because things change, right? We never knew that all things this will happen. So things which are achievable, visible, and then, continuously doing that as a cycle would help at any moment of time in any organization. It can be any level of organization. I think that really, really helps. And having some core values, right? How you do it, right? And the core values being equivalently measured for, a C-level person against a person who has just joined. That, that thing will create. I mean, if I am somebody who has joined just now with 2 years of experience, knowing that my core values are almost equivalent to what, a C-level executive is measured on similar core values, I think that would obviously create a lot of transparency, and, the faith of the employees in an organization increases to a huge extent.
So that was very key points that you spoke about. So what's the intent behind? And I think in one of our conversations with an HR leader, he was saying, I think we should in fact change, calling performance evaluation. Instead of performance evaluation, we should call it performance conversations. Because evaluation is like, I'm measuring you on something and you are at fault, so you need to justify yourself. Whereas it needs to be a lot more of a conversation where it's a coaching kind of a methodology which needs to be looked into. So Anand, Sharad touched upon the importance of having the right tools and technologies also, which can help measure these OKRs well. So what do you think? How best can technology be leveraged to enable this?
Absolutely. I think digitization is the key going forward, especially in the given times when you are not co-located with your colleagues and friends. It's obviously going to be extremely difficult to look at the continuous feedback, look at the OKRs, unless it is in a single system of truth. Unless you have a single place to look at all of the hard work that you have done. If you have set up the OKRs, if you have given the feedback, but if it is not easily accessible, which is not going to be the case if it is not digitized. Mm-hmm. So I guess when I say digitization, it does not necessarily mean you have to use some complex tools, right? Mm-hmm. For example, even for doing OKRs, we don't recommend teams starting with OKRs, go in and use appraise. No, our usual recommendation is start with a shared spreadsheet. That's the most basic form of digitization that you're going to need. Once your team absorbs let's say, all of the processes that are required to implement the process, you'll automatically be nudged in the direction where you'll have to move to something more sophisticated.
Interesting. So as we touched upon multiple aspects with respect to leadership, performance management with OKRs and anxiety among various aspects. So all these are in a way contributing to the great attrition. So if we need to move from great attrition to great attraction, where employees are staying over in organizations, there are certain things which organizations need to do right moving forward as the new year begins. So I would request each one of you to share one strategy that you think organizations can adopt to move towards creating a great attraction for their organization. So we'll begin with Professor.
And maybe this is a cop-out answer, but I'm going to go with focusing on employee experience. That is so vital. It always has been. It's always been essential. And for years, people have been talking about customer experience and trying to make sure that you attract and retain great customers and that you have brand loyalty and customer commitment. All of those same principles apply within the workplace to the employees. So we need a strong, positive employee experience holistically from the recruitment process, onboarding, on through performance conversations and performance management, mentoring, coaching, career progression, all of that. Like all of that, we need to have a really positive employee experience. And that studies have shown that will increase, that will allow you to attract better people. It will allow you to increase and retain better people and decrease the turnover rate, increase the retention rate. It will produce better results. You'll have more productive, innovative people who are motivated and who are just more committed to the organization. And so in this environment where people have lots and lots of choices, we cannot just assume that if someone leaves, we're going to just go out to the marketplace and find another good employee. So many positions are being left unfilled right now.
Yes.
And so it's not even a matter of getting like a good employee. Like we can't even find a bad employee sometimes to replace those who have left. And so we just have to focus on our people. We can't just claim it's, fluffy HR, it's warm fuzzies, and we just need everyone to be happy all the time. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about actual bottom line impacts that are going to help the organization be successful. Unless we reorient ourselves towards employee experience, we're going to lose out in the marketplace of labor.
Very interesting. Sharad?
I think that was an important point. I would like to add value-based culture and authentic leadership. So you can't, project in the marketplace something which you're not, because if people buy that and they join the company, they are going to find that out. And so so your early attrition and things like that, people join the company and they know that something was promised, but the reality is totally different. So it might not, it might not be a marketing per se that, you are authentic, but then you have to figure it out that, how to sell authenticity in a way, right? And that way you attract the right people. It's a better match, because then people know that this is the value system that I feel at home here, because I just have to be myself. And, this clicks with me. And ultimately people, I think, especially millennials, a lot of the previous issues that we discussed are also the millennial is a factor there. You have to be more open, more authentic, two-way street, things like that. So I would say value-based culture and authentic leadership. So you allow employees to be themselves. I think, if we can build that into our workplaces, they would be great workplaces, because, you are allowing people to feel at home, to be themselves, and to grow, without having to put up a facade just to, come to work and collect their paycheck.
True. Shri?
I think I'll pick over from where Sharad left, culture, right? Or a sense of community. I think in the last 2 years, what has happened is we are not going to office, right? So, at least for me, I had a huge support system in office, right? I fight with my husband, I fight with somebody else, I fight with my mom, I go and have a discussion with somebody in office, There are a lot of, surveys which ask, like, do you have a best friend at work?
Yes.
Right? And that actually makes a lot of difference. And to be true, I have best friends from previous organization whom I still reach out to discuss things. What has happened in this last 2 years is that sense of community and connect somewhere has broken down, right? Now we are just connecting for work. Okay, this is a call in the morning, this is a call in the afternoon, there's multiple calls through the day, and then work after the calls, right? Because you have to achieve what is discussed in the call, right?
Right.
So that leaves very little space for personal connect over this, that nonsensical, I had read somewhere that, nonsensical conversations are very important to a company's culture, right? As is the client conversations, right? And, we have lost those nonsensical conversations over near the coffee pot, or just while we are walking around the office, across a cubicle, we would just pick up something, right? Hey, how are you? Just what happened through the day, right? That is missing. And sadly, I feel that, there are avenues which are there, right? Slack, Google Spaces. There's so many tech, this thing which we can pick up. The problem is it is not driven down properly, okay? And it is not top driven, right? That, somebody at a senior leadership comes into a Slack for the whole organization and says, hey, how are you? I know something happened today. I was walking around with my dog and this happened, what's going on? Or even speak about important stuff just like that, right? We don't need to have town halls to communicate things, right? The world is going in a very, very fast rate. So we need to make things continuously, right? And communicate things continuously, even freely. So I think building that culture, identifying that, finding that channel that brings in the nonsensical conversation in your workplace through various channels, and the leaders driving it down, manically to make sure that it happens. I think that would make a lot of difference. Okay. And very basic thing, we always forget, we are always kind of focusing on things that are at higher needs, very basic, the bottommost part, the hygiene needs, right? It's sad, but it is true that, when we are okay to pay 120% hike to a person whom we are bringing in new against somebody, right? Whereas a person who is right here with me, we are not spending time in the growth in platform. And it's very basic. I mean, most probably a 30% hike. A good career path to show that in 2 years, this is where you would be, would retain that employee and, stop us from this thing, right? We are okay to do multiple, hikes after a person kind of quits. But, we don't do it naturally. We do appraisals every year and hike once a year. Why not, think of a process where, high performers, consistent performers get some form of hike or some form of, recognition or rewards through various systems, just not the R&R format. I'm saying those things that can be given out, identified as a recognition through the year to tell people, yes, we value you. I think that is also it's very basic, but, showing that trust and value is very, very important.
Very important. Anand, any thoughts?
Absolutely. I think majority of the points have been said already, but if I'm looking at the current context, right, I'll say transparency is going to be a key factor. Because what has happened is a lot of the organizations are used to have, in-office situation where everyone was physically co-located, and there was not as much digitization as it is today. Although it is forced to an extent, it is happening, right? So the phrase was, a spoken word cannot be taken back. I'll probably extend that a little bit, and I'll say it's probably possible to take back the spoken word, but once you leave a digital footprint, it's not possible to take it back, right? So coming back to what Sharad said, if an organization is promising X and delivering Y, then that's going to be definitely a problem. And I think that's what is leading to the great resignation behavior that we are seeing at the moment, because individuals are looking through the glass. They're easily understanding what is being said, what is being done. So as soon as the organizations change their behavior and become more transparent, I think that problem will definitely get solved, and the great resignation can really be inverted into great attraction.
Very interesting. So if I were to summarize some of the key takeaways for our viewers out there, so I think creating the right employee experience, I think that's the core and fundamental of it. It's not just about customer experience, but about employee experience, building a culture which looks at authentic leadership at the core of how you're leading your teams, having forums which kind of facilitate even the nonsensical conversations, right? And driven from the top, as well as rewarding people periodically rather than wait for one full year to do that. And last but not the least, have the right technologies and tools which builds in that transparency so that employees can see what's actually happening out there. They feel connected to the culture and they would want to continue with that organization. So thanks once again for all our panelists here. Very interesting perspectives, and I'm sure organizations out there will have a lot of takeaways from these, which they can incorporate into the organization and thereby move from being a great attrition towards great attraction. So thank you once again for all your time and your inputs.
Bluer Than Indigo Leadership, the journey of becoming a truly remarkable leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There is no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of your problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for your individuals, teams, and organizations. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.